Hey guys, tonight we're setting off on a journey, not just through time, but altitude. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a mist-draped cliff in the Andes. The air is thin, the wind tugs gently at your cloak, and beneath your feet, an impossibly narrow stone path snakes upward, vanishing into clouds that smell faintly of wet rock and ancient moss. The world feels carved in grayscale, slate, fog, bone. You shift your weight. The sandals on your feet are made of woven llama hide, barely thick enough to dull the sting of the stone. Your lungs are already arguing with the elevation. But there's no stopping now. You've got a message to deliver, fast. And no, there's no donkey, no pigeon, not even a bicycle, just your own aching legs and a relay of strangers waiting for you down the trail. You're a chasquis now, and the Inca Empire's got mail. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your current location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you all tune in. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first cautious steps, marveling at how the stone beneath your soles fits together so tightly. There's barely a crack. This isn't some random mountain trail. This is the start of the Capac Ñan, the great Inca road system. A marvel of engineering, a masterpiece of imperial logistics, and a nightmare for anyone afraid of heights. Your breath grows shallow as the trail starts to rise. One stone stair leads to another, each just slightly steeper than the last. Llamas, the fluffy beasts of burden, blink at you from a distance. But you know they're not built for this kind of rush. This job belongs to you and your legs. Down below, deep in the valleys, the empire hums, from what is now Colombia in the north to Chile in the south. The Inca controlled over 2,000 miles of terrain. No wheels, no writing, and yet somehow, messages could travel over 100 miles a day. Historians still argue whether this system rivaled the Roman roads in efficiency. But one thing's certain, it didn't come with sandals. You're not alone on this path. Up ahead, a thatched roof peeks over a ridge. A tambo, a rest stop, kind of like a roadside motel with fewer minibars and more clay water jugs. You press on, ignoring the burning in your calves. You're imagining what awaits. Dried maize, maybe a roasted kai if you're lucky, and a bench. Oh, glorious, bench-shaped salvation. Every few hundred steps, you see little signs of the past. A carved rock here, a ceremonial post there. These roads weren't just practical, they were sacred, chosen by the Sapa Inca himself, or at least his army of engineers with suspiciously excellent quadriceps. Some sections still survive today, embedded in modern cities or hidden in jungle tangles, as stubborn as the empire that built them. But don't get too poetic. You stub your toe hard. It's a reminder. Beauty and pain often go hand in hand. Especially at 12,000 feet. A sharp whistle cuts through the air. Another chasquis is approaching from behind. You recognize the puff of breath, the high-speed sandals, the small bundle wrapped in woven cloth. You both slow, exchange a nod, and just like that, you're off again. Relay style. You've passed the baton, or in this case, a message likely encoded in quipu knots or just memorized entirely. No pressure. The altitude shifts again, and with it, your senses. The wind whistles differently. A condor circles overhead, as if monitoring your delivery time. You swear it's judging you, probably used to faster runners. And then, in the distance, another tambo. You've made it. For now, you sink to the ground, breathing hard. A local hands you a ceramic cup of chicha, the fermented corn drink of champions. You take a sip. It's sour, slightly fizzy, and vaguely like someone tried to make beer in a barn. But in this moment, it tastes like heaven. One of the elders begins to talk about the Sapa Inca, the living god who sleeps in Cusco and dreams in gold. Every message, every knotted cord, Every frantic footstep is in his service. Even your sore feet, especially your sore feet. You close your eyes. Somewhere far behind you, the sun is setting. Somewhere ahead, the empire waits. You've got paths to run, clouds to race, and no excuse not to enjoy the scenery, even if it smells faintly of wet llama. Your rest doesn't last long. At the tambo, a soft thud signals the arrival of another courier. He's younger, maybe barely into his teens, but his calves look like they've been sculpted by altitude itself. He's got the look, cheeks reddened by thin air, eyes sharp as obsidian, and a steady rhythm in his breath like he was born jogging uphill. You nod. He nods back. He's one of the chasquis now. Just like you. You step into the relay station's cool interior, stone walls, packed dirt floor, a shelf of spare sandals, and a few clay pots holding dried chuño potatoes. You grab one, bite in. It's cold, hard, and tastes like the earth it came from. Not great, but not terrible. That's sort of the chasquis lifestyle in a nutshell. Rarely terrible. Never luxurious. Always urgent. Your supervisor gestures toward a new bundle. It's wrapped in colorful woven cloth. Tight and weatherproof. Not heavy, which means it's likely a message. Not a gift. You tuck it under your tunic. Adjust your headband, and step back onto the trail. Now the path curves downward. But don't get excited. Inca roads going downhill are somehow more painful. It's like your knees become your enemies. Each step feels like a personal betrayal. You use your momentum, lean forward just enough not to fall, and imagine you're gliding. Sort of. The air thickens. A cloud bank rolls in from below, swallowing the world in soft white. Visibility drops. You can hear birds, insects, maybe a distant waterfall, but you can't see more than 10 steps ahead. It's disorienting, peaceful, a little terrifying. This is the life of the chasquis. You wonder, as the mist clings to your skin, how anyone survives this job past 30. The truth? Many don't. It's a young person's game. But it's prestigious, too. Only the fittest, fastest, and most trustworthy are chosen. In a society without wheels or beasts of speed, the human body becomes the empire's greatest vehicle. Historians still debate exactly how many chasquis worked the trails. Some estimates say a few thousand. Others push toward 10. What's clearer is that their reach was astounding. Using relay teams stationed every 4 to 6 miles, messages could travel from Quito to Cusco in under 5 days. That's over 1.500 miles, on foot. You try not to compare that to how long your last email took to send. And the messages? Not written. The Inca had no script, no alphabet. Everything was memorized. The spoken word was sacred, passed from one chasquis to the next like breath itself. In emergencies, a runner might carry a message over 100 miles in a single day, pausing only to change sandals or down a handful of dried maize. There are records, Spanish chroniclers, eyes wide, describing the runners they saw zipping across mountains like they were possessed. One friar wrote that they moved like deer. Another said the roads were infested with messengers. Charming. Your mind drifts. You imagine being one of the first chasquis. Centuries ago, before the empire was massive, before the roads were complete. Just you, your sandals, and a suspiciously grumpy alpaca side-eyeing your form. The wind picks up again. You tighten your cloak. A drizzle begins to beat on your arms. It's not unpleasant. More like the mountain reminding you who's in charge. Ahead, a silhouette appears, another runner. The two of you exchange a silent gesture, and he steps aside. No need for chit-chat. The handoff has happened already. It's invisible, oral, seamless. You hold the words of your empire in your breath, and you don't dare forget a syllable. Along the way, you pass apachetas, small piles of stones placed by travelers. You stop to add one, a quiet offering to the gods of the path. Maybe they'll give you stronger knees. Maybe not. Suddenly, you remember something. In some parts of the empire, chasquis were not just messengers, they were spies, or sentinels. trusted to carry warnings about rebellions, raids, or floods. You wonder if your message is one of those. It probably isn't, probably just more potatoes. But the possibility gives your steps more purpose. There's a smell in the air, smoke, wood smoke. You round a bend and see it. Another tambo. A rest station on the side of a cliff. Improbably clinging to the edge of the world. A fire crackles inside. A pot steams. A man waves you in. He asks no questions. He knows your job. He pours chicha into a gourd and hands you a slice of roasted sweet potato. You devour it like it's the last meal you'll ever have. And then you sleep. Not on a bed. There are no beds. Just a bundle of straw. A folded blanket. And your own aching limbs to keep you grounded. In your dreams, you run. Over bridges made of grass rope. Across salt flats. Through fog thicker than soup. You carry the words of an empire on your breath. You never stop. When you wake, it's still dark. A single torch is lit near the doorway. The road is waiting. It always is. The morning greets you like a cold slap to the face. The Andes don't do gentle dawns. The air is thin and sharp. And your muscles complain before you even stand. You stretch anyway, because you have about 1,000 stone steps waiting for you today. And every joint better be on board. You throw on your outer tunic, adjust the sash holding your bundle, and step out into the crisp gray light. The world feels half awake. Birds are calling from somewhere above the clouds, but you can't see them. You walk carefully. Overnight mist has slicked the path. Your feet slap against stone as you begin again. You're not walking on random rocks. This is the Capac Ñan, the royal road, built for speed, power, and, oddly enough, beauty. The Incas didn't just build a road. They built the road. Over 24,000 miles of interlocking paths, stairs, rope bridges, and carved tunnels. This isn't a straight Roman highway stretching flat across plains. No, this system zigzags up volcanoes, dips into jungles, and dances across deserts like it's daring gravity to pick a fight. Each section is different. Today's path is steep, with tight stone switchbacks hugging the cliffside. You pass drainage channels carved into the trail to prevent flooding. Not bad for a people without iron tools or the wheel. Historians still debate how the Inca engineers managed such precision. Some believe they used simple surveying ropes and water levels. Others think they worked mostly by feel. Generations of knowledge passed down from builder to builder. What's certain is that you're grateful for those ancient engineers right now. This path may be steep, but it's solid. You'd rather have blisters than fall off a cliff. Your sandals grip the stone surprisingly well. You're wearing the standard yushuta, made from llama or alpaca hide, tightly woven and surprisingly durable. No arch support, of course. These are not exactly orthopedic, but they mold to your foot over time. Some say a well-worn pair can outlast your knees. The path opens up briefly at a lookout point. You pause, not to admire the view, though it's breathtaking. Terraced fields descend like green stairs into a valley far below. A herd of alpacas moves like spilled marshmallows across the landscape. You pause because there's a rest stone, a sewa, marker and milepost. Sacred and practical. You sit, just for a moment. A distant whistle breaks the stillness. You perk up. Another chasquis is coming. Fast. You spot him jogging around a bend with the rhythm of someone who's had just enough breakfast. He carries a carved wooden baton, the quipu, perhaps, or a verbal message, heavy with names and numbers and dates you'll never hear. You nod again. The sacred relay in spoken. He passes. You watch him shrink into the mist. You wonder, where did he start? Where will he end? Somewhere in the empire. A noble or priest is waiting for that breath, that memory, that invisible letter. You keep moving. Midway through the morning, you spot a stretch of road that's different. It gleams. Literally, white stones have been inlaid here, volcanic rock polished smooth. You've reached a Capac Ñan segment, the highest class of Incan roads. These were built for imperial use only. Sapa Inca traffic, military patrols, Maybe the delivery of royal corn. You realize something. You're jogging on a path once trodden by emperors. Kind of makes the burning in your thighs feel nobler, doesn't it? Some parts of the Capac Nyan even had causeways, raised roadways across wetlands, supported by foundations of gravel and woven reed mats. Others had staircases that seemed to mock the idea of horizontal land. You'll be lucky if today doesn't end with a strained ankle and a deep respect for gravity. You round a corner and find a chasquis wasi, a small hut for runners only. Not quite a tambo. It's basic. Straw roof, water jug, rolled mats, but it's yours for a breath or two. You take shelter, unroll your quipus scroll, imaginary or real, and make a mental note. Keep left at the fork. Avoid the angry dog at the pottery village. Do not trip near the cactus grove again. While you rest, you snack. Dried coca leaves, a few kernels of toasted maize, maybe a bite of charqui, dried meat tougher than most arguments. These foods were the power bars of their day, portable, salty, and likely chewed with some light swearing. You sip water from a gourd, cool, clean, carried in a sloshing belly pouch that's seen more mountain passes than most historians. Your body hums with effort, not pain, yet, but the kind of deep, glowing fatigue that makes naps feel like earned treasure. The journey continues. Later, you cross one of the most famous features of the road, a rope bridge. Suspended over a canyon so deep, your stomach tries to file a complaint. It sways under your steps. Your toes grip instinctively. These bridges were made from woven grass and had to be replaced every year by the local community. That's right. Community bridge maintenance was a thing in the Andes before wafis existed. You step lightly, arms out for balance. The river roars far below. The wind tries to make your tunic dance. You tell yourself you're fine. You've done this before. But also, you make a mental note to never, ever look down again. Safely across, you exhale, a little loudly, and maybe pat the ground like it's an old friend. Up ahead, a small shrine to Inti, the sun god, gleams in the early light. You pause, whisper a few words. You're not the religious type, but anyone sprinting across cliff faces for a living could use divine backup. You press on. The road curves again, revealing more terraces, another tambo, and the faint scent of firewood. Smoke means rest, food, stories, maybe even someone who knows a shortcut. Your legs protest, but you smile anyway. The empire runs on runners. And for now, you're one of them. By now, you've begun to develop a rhythm, not so much a comfortable one. More like a mutually agreed truce between your knees and the mountain. The Capac Nyan, in all its zigzagging glory, doesn't give you a break. It doesn't flatten out. It doesn't soften. It just exists, carved stubbornly into stone and willpower. But as you round another ridge and the trail levels slightly, a welcome sight greets you, another tambo. Unlike the chasquis wasi huts, this rest station has real infrastructure. Larger stone walls, a proper cooking fire, a corral with actual animals, not the judgmental ones from the last village, but tired-looking llamas who are probably just as sick of the trail as you are. You're ushered in by a tambo keeper, someone appointed to run this outpost and care for passing messengers. He looks at your dust-covered feet, nods solemnly, and without a word, hands you a bowl of something steaming. You don't ask what it is. It's hot, it's edible, and it doesn't bite back. That's enough. Tambos were the beating hearts of the Inca postal system, built every 6 to 9 miles along the royal roads. They served as supply depots, rest stops, and relay points. Some were simple shelters, others were full complexes, almost like mini villages. Here, you might find food stores, extra clothing, even fuel. Yes, fuel, though mostly in the form of dried dung or wood bundles. Not exactly high octane. Historians still argue whether tambo records were kept meticulously or more loosely managed. The Spanish, ever the bureaucrats, believed there had to be some accounting system, but there's no written proof. Just oral tradition and well-fed messengers like you, slurping soup at high altitude. You shift onto a bench carved directly from a fallen stone slab, feeling your muscles unravel like old rope. There's chatter around you, runners arriving, a few leaving, someone complaining about the last segment's incline being personal. Everyone's got blisters, everyone's still running. You start talking with another chasquis, a veteran. He's older, maybe late 20s, a dinosaur in this profession. He's from the coast, he says, where the roads aren't stone but sand-packed and sunbaked. You swap stories. He once sprinted across a desert for 2 straight days to deliver a quipu bearing tax counts. You once outran a goat that didn't understand boundaries. He wins. Tambos weren't just waystations, they were how the entire empire breathed. The Inca didn't rule from horseback or ship, they ruled through communication. And communication, in the Andes, required architecture. This particular tambo is large enough to store colcas, granaries filled with preserved goods, dried potatoes, salted meats, corn, and other rations. These weren't just for messengers. In times of war or drought, they fed entire regions. You stroll past one and peek in. Rows of woven sacks line the walls, filled with who knows what. Probably potatoes. Always potatoes. You can't help but wonder, did the Inca build tambos so frequently because they cared deeply for their couriers, or because they knew runners had a tendency to collapse if you pushed them more than 10 miles at a time? Probably both. Let's be honest, you're not built for ultramarathons either. And then there's the bureaucracy, gentle, soft-spoken, but very much alive. A tambo official asks for your runner token, a carved piece of wood proving your courier rank. You hand it over. He examines it briefly, then records something in a knotted cord system hanging by the doorway. No pens, just loops and strings in memory. You consider how this all works, people running, sleeping, eating, relaying messages across thousands of miles without writing anything down. It's like operating a government with no Wi-Fi, no paper, and everyone's jogging. And yet, it works. Eventually, the rest ends. You rise slowly, filled with stew and dread. A new bundle awaits, tightly wrapped, marked with a tuft of dyed wool. Red, meaning urgency. You sigh. There goes your gentle afternoon pace. The tambo keeper hands you a fresh gourd of water. Another nod. That's it. No farewell speeches. No sentimental back pats. You're a cog in something enormous. Revered, yes, but still a cog. You step out and immediately regret the altitude again. The road from this tambo climbs sharply, weaving through rock outcroppings that look suspiciously like jaguar heads. You tell yourself it's just the angle. You press on. Partway up, you find an old way marker, another sewa. This one is ancient, moss-covered, and cracked down the middle. You touch it, almost out of instinct, not for luck, for connection. You're walking in grooves carved centuries ago, and somehow the stones remember every footstep. You pass a pair of farmers leading llamas in the opposite direction. They smile, offer you a maize cake, and ask if you've seen any messengers coming down from Cusco. You shake your head and pocket the cake. You'll need it later, probably after your next emotional breakdown halfway up this mountain. You reach a narrow ridge, the wind whipping fiercely now. Below you, just clouds. Above you, a trail that climbs like it's fleeing the planet. And somewhere, at the top, another tambo, another bundle, another step in a journey that never really ends. You laugh to yourself, quietly. It's either that or cry. You opt for the one that doesn't use up extra water. And so, you run. Again. Your pace slows as you descend into a valley. Mist still clinging to your shoulders like a damp shawl. The air thickens here, more humid, less crisp, and every inhale smells of green things and slow decay. You're heading toward one of the empire's most bizarre phenomena. A world where letters are passed without ever being written. Because, surprise, the Inca postal system had no alphabet. Zero, not even squiggles on bark. Instead, they relied on memory. Human memory, fragile, fallible, and somehow, incredibly reliable. You pass another marker stone, and in the distance, you hear voices. Two messengers exchanging something quietly before one jogs away again. You pause behind a grove of canna trees, just long enough to catch a glimpse of the exchange. The remaining runner unfurls a bundle and quickly re-wraps it. You recognize the gesture. It means he just received an oral message. Something delicate, maybe a tax record, maybe a directive from the Sapa Inca himself. You shiver, not from cold, but from awe. To be trusted with a message like that, with no backup, no papyrus, no parchment, just your brain, that's pressure. You can barely remember where you left your sandals last night. This practice was standard. Chasquis were trained to memorize exact phrasing, proper names, quantities, and dates, all to be delivered intact to the next runner. No embellishing, no forgetting. A misplaced syllable could mean a village gets 200 sacks of grain, or 20. To help with all this, some chasquis used rhythmic breathing techniques or repetition chants while running. You try one. 4 baskets, 2 nobles, grain for Enta. You say it aloud as you jog. 4 baskets, 2 nobles. And just like that, your mind becomes a post office, and your lungs the stamp. Still, oral messages weren't the only method. Enter the quipu. You arrive at the next tambo to find an elderly man hunched over one. Strings of varying lengths and colors dangle from a thicker cord. Knots twist and loop in deliberate patterns. It looks like a tangled bracelet, or maybe a very enthusiastic cat toy. But this is ancient accounting, Inca style. The man notices your stare and smiles. He holds up the cord. This one tells of corn yields in the Sacred Valley. He says, last year, a bit dry, but acceptable. You nod like you understand. You don't, at all. The quipu, or quipu, was the Incas' record-keeping system. No symbols, no letters, just knotted strings, color-coded and spaced at exact intervals. They tracked census numbers, tribute owed, harvest amounts, even military counts. Some historians believe they might have held phonetic information too, a proto-writing system. Others argue they were strictly numerical, like an abacus you wear. Debates rage on. Were quipus read only by officials? Could runners memorize them like song lyrics? Could quipus tell stories? No one agrees, which is fitting, because if the Inca taught us anything, it's that communication doesn't need to be obvious to work. In your hand, the tambo keeper places a simple quipu, just 4 strands, each bearing a different knot. You try to interpret it. Nothing clicks. It's like trying to read Braille in the dark with gloves on. But you nod seriously and tuck it away. You'll deliver it like a pro. Outside, the trail forks. One path continues along the valley floor, weaving through dense brush. The other climbs. Again, of course, you choose the high road. As you ascend, you reflect on how messages moved, runner to runner, memory to memory, knotted cord to tired hand. No ink, no paper trail, just trust. And yet, messages reached their destinations, villages restocked, marriages arranged, invasions anticipated. Compare that to modern life. You once waited 3 weeks for a replacement sandal because the courier couldn't find your house. Meanwhile, Incan runners were threading unmarked jungle paths with no GPS and a brain full of tax codes. You reach a viewpoint. Far below, a lake glistens in the sun, shaped like a jaguar curled around a fish. You blink. Is that? No, never mind. It's just a rock shaped vaguely like a potato. Easy mistake. Still, you marvel, not just at the scenery, but at the system. The empire's heartbeat moved through feet and lungs and carefully memorized syllables. A mistake didn't just inconvenience someone, it could collapse a system. And yet, it worked. You imagine a chasquis tripping mid-message and forgetting a name. Did he backtrack, fake it, say something like, the tall guy with the hair wants more corn? Probably not. Training was intense. Chasquis were expected to be elite, physically and mentally. You were like a combination marathon runner, diplomat, and talking spreadsheet. You remember hearing a tale, possibly exaggerated, about a chasquis who memorized an entire royal census, every person in 3 villages, and recited it back twice when the next runner dropped the quipu in a river. Historians questioned the accuracy, but then again, historians still argue about almost everything Inca, including whether their postal system was meant primarily for efficiency or as a display of state power. The correct answer is probably both. By now, you're nearing the next handoff. You quicken your pace. One last hill. Your feet are sore. Your shoulders ache. But your mind? Sharp. Ready. You take one last look at the valley before ducking into the trees. Time to pass the message. You don't write it. You live it. You're not even halfway up this hill and your legs are staging a rebellion. The trail tightens, winding like a lazy serpent through a patch of thick brush. Branches scratch at your arms, but you barely feel them. Your lungs have more pressing concerns, like staying functional. This leg of the route is more remote. You haven't seen another soul in hours. Just the birds overhead, who clearly don't understand why you're not flying. You stumble slightly on a loose stone and remind yourself, this is just a warm-up. Because back at base, chasquis training makes this look like a nap in the grass. You finally crest the ridge and find a narrow clearing. The grass is flattened, a tambo long since abandoned, but still usable. You stop to catch your breath and sip from your gourd. This is the perfect spot to think about what it takes to become a chasquis. Because spoiler alert, not just anyone got to sprint for the Sapa Inca. Training to be a chasquis began early. You likely started running before you could pronounce Cusco. At first, it was just village races, sprints up steep hills, relays with sticks or pebbles. But the elders noticed things. Your stride, your stamina, your ability to remember, word for word, that long list of ceremonial maize offerings from last week. From there, it became official. You were selected, pulled into a life of discipline, purpose, and foot blisters. Training grounds were typically in the highlands, thin air, rugged terrain, and almost no flat ground, perfect for developing the lung capacity of a hummingbird. In fact, some Spanish chroniclers claimed chasquis could run while whistling. Try that sometime when you're not gasping for breath like a vacuum on its last leg. Historians still argue what the physical tests were exactly. Some believe aspiring chasquis had to run specific stretches within set time limits. Others say they were trained in pairs to master baton handoffs with surgical precision. Everyone agrees. The job wasn't for loafers. Literally or figuratively, you begin moving again, legs loosened by the break. The path here is littered with exposed roots, and every step requires attention. This is a thinking road, perfect for reflecting on mental training, because being a chasquis wasn't just about being fast. You also had to be a human filing cabinet. Imagine being told, memorize this list of 5 items, 2 names, a tax decree, and the latest elevation of the potato fields. And do it fast, and don't mess up. Then, run 10 miles. Then, recite it perfectly while out of breath. No pressure. That's why training included mnemonic devices. Runners used rhythm, association, even visual memory tricks. If a noble named Amaru requested 20 blankets, you might visualize a snake. Amaru means serpent, sleeping under 20 alpaca pelts. Your brain became a storybook of bizarre, but effective, imagery. And then there's the practice of silent running. Yes, silent. You weren't supposed to gossip, chit-chat, or blurt out what you were carrying. Discretion was essential. Some chasquis were even trained to avoid eye contact, to keep focus, avoid distraction, and maybe prevent someone from casually asking, "Hey, what's in that quipu?" You pass through a shady grove where the air smells like wet cedar. The breeze cools your face as you jog steadily, thoughts returning to the perks of the job. Because despite all the soreness and the occasional mountain lion, being a chasquis had its benefits. You had access to the best tambos. You got fed first. You often received tribute in kind, dried goods, cloth, respect. In some regions, you were exempt from mita, the labor tax that tied most Inca citizens to state projects like farming or building roads. You were too valuable to waste on wheat. And then there's the pension. Yes, you heard that right. Retired chasquis often received land or maize rations for their service. Not exactly a beachfront condo, but in an agrarian society, it was a solid retirement plan. At least, assuming your knees survived to retirement age. You pass a stone outcrop where someone has carved a rough spiral. You pause, running your fingers over it. It might mean wind, or a trail, or nothing. The Inca left plenty of symbols, some understood, many lost. Maybe this one was a joke. You are here, also exhausted. Up ahead, the trail widens again, and a large tambo comes into view. This one is bustling. A few messengers rest under a reed awning. One sharp-eyed attendant waves you over and checks your badge. A carved disc worn around your neck. Proof that you're an active courier and not just someone looking for a free meal. He nods, gives you a gourd of chicha, and points to a bundle lying on a flat rock. You unwrap it. Inside, a quipu, tightly knotted, and next to it, a verbal cue stitched into the cloth with colored thread. That's your next task. Memorize the sequence, the names, the cargo. Recite it. Now again, now again. Another chasquis walks past and says, "That's the third time I've had to run that quipu this month. I could recite it in my sleep." You smile. Maybe you should. He laughs, then coughs, then stretches like a man who just remembered he's got 14 miles of hills before lunch. You know the feeling. You take a final sip, adjust your sash, and head back out into the trail. Muscles warmed, message stored, wind rising. You run not just with your feet, but with your memory. You're running again. This time, not for glory, not for speed, not even for the view, but for practice. Because not every chasquis day starts with an urgent mission and a fresh gourd of chicha. Some days, it's all about drills. Welcome to Inca Relay Bootcamp, where the altitude's high, the expectations higher, and the chance of vomiting while sprinting uphill is, well, let's just say it's not zero. You follow a path etched deep into the mountain, your sandals thudding a steady rhythm. The sky above is endless blue, cloudless and judgmental. Somewhere behind you, an instructor. If you can call a man who yells from a rock an instructor, shouts the next segment. Next checkpoint. 1 tambo. 2 messages. Go. And you go. Training as a chasquis wasn't an informal apprenticeship. It was serious, organized, and probably involved more sore calves than you'd care to admit. Recruits, young, strong, usually from communities already near the main road, were pulled into training programs. Some attached to temples, others near military posts. You were chosen, and once chosen, life got sweaty. The first weeks, all about terrain, uphill runs, downhill sprints, sidestepping rocky ledges without tripping over your own dignity. The Capac Nyan offered every challenge imaginable: rain-slick stones, sandy coastal stretches, loose gravel highlands, and jungle mud that could eat your foot whole. So the instructors made sure you got really familiar with all of it. Today's drill is a timed dash between 2 chasquis wasses. The runner-only shelters. You've got a bundle to deliver, wrapped tight in a colored cloth. Just like the real thing. Except instead of containing a tax report or a wedding arrangement, this one probably has a rock inside. Maybe 2. Your trainer believes in realism. End blisters. You reach the halfway point and pass the message, shouting out the memorized cue as you hand it over. The other trainee nods and repeats it. Perfect. Except, wait, he said 50 instead of 15. Your trainer groans audibly. That's enough blankets for a province, not a family. Mistakes like that, in real life, could mean serious consequences. A village starved, a noble offended, or someone got a birthday llama 3 weeks late. Unacceptable. Historians still debate whether all chasquis were full-time professionals or if some were part-timers. filling in between planting seasons. It's likely both. In larger relay chains, runners were permanent. In local areas, villagers might step in, but in the imperial network, elite, vetted, fast. The training drills continue. This time, obstacle run. You scramble through a simulated landslide, loose stones intentionally dumped across the trail. You leap, twist, nearly twist an ankle, but land upright. Next, a shallow stream. You're expected to cross without soaking the bundle. You tighten your sash, hold it high, and tiptoe across slippery stones like you're auditioning for Inca's Got Balance. You pass, barely. At the far tambo, you slump into the shade, gulping water like it's sacred. It kind of is. An instructor hands you a dried coca leaf. Chew slowly, he says. It'll help with fatigue, and maybe suppress the very real desire to lie flat and never move again. The others gather, breathless. There's the kid from the lowlands who's all speed and no memory. The girl from the mountain village who can recite a 30-name tribute list while sprinting. The old guy, 25, probably, who whispers that he's only here because he needs a retirement tambo in a nice climate. You laugh, then cough. The thin air's still unforgiving. Next up, quipu decoding. A basket is set in front of you. Inside, 5 cords, each with multiple knots, colors ranging from maize yellow to ocean blue. You're given a prompt. Harvest yields for the sacred valley. You're expected to read the cord, then repeat the figures. You squint. This knot looks like 23, or maybe 203. You guess. Your instructor sighs and marks something on a shell tablet. It's not great news. You mutter an apology, and he shrugs. Better than yesterday. The day continues. You run, memorize, run again. At one point, you carry a gourd filled with water and a verbal message and a pretend gift of dried fish. You are a walking post office, and not a particularly organized one. But bit by bit, the motions smooth out. Your lungs adjust. Your brain remembers the sequences faster. Your legs stop sending hate mail to your spine. As dusk falls, training wraps. You gather near a fire. Everyone smells like sweat and damp wool. But spirits are high. Someone tells a joke about a chasquis who accidentally delivered a love letter to a tax collector. The punchline involves an unexpected wedding and a pig. You grin. The fire crackles. A trainer gives a small speech about legacy, duty, pride. You half listen, already dreaming of roasted maize and maybe a soft llama to lean against. And then the stars come out, sharp and numerous. No light pollution, just the Andean sky, your aching muscles, and the knowledge that tomorrow you'll run again. Because being a chasquis isn't just about doing the job. It's about becoming the job. Breathing it, living it. Remembering every bend in the trail, every village's name, every knot in the cord. You don't just carry messages. You are the message. You're running with purpose today, more than usual. Not because your lungs feel good, they don't. Or because your calves are finally behaving, they're not. But because the message you're carrying? It's secret, high level, and absolutely not meant for wandering ears. Which brings us to an important part of the Inca postal network that most history books barely whisper about: security. You may think being a chasquis meant speed and stamina. And you'd be right, but there was another layer, subtle, quiet, invisible, because in a world without locks or envelopes, keeping a message safe meant keeping it inside you, in your breath, in your memory, and maybe, once or twice, in a very cleverly disguised bundle of potatoes. You crest a small hill, breath even but eyes sharp. The path here is narrow, flanked by thick brush and sloped rocks. Easy to run, easier to ambush. Not that this happened often, but it could. Bandits weren't common in the Inca heartland. But human nature being what it is, not every valley was full of cooperative villagers and friendly tambo keepers. That's why chasquis learned to read more than trails. You had to sense when something was off. A tambo too quiet, a runner too chatty, a traveler who asked too many questions about who you were running for. You duck beneath a leaning stone arch, a marker for this stretch of trail. You're now deep inside what used to be a military corridor, connecting Cusco to key outposts. Here, messages weren't just about harvest numbers. They were about movements, of soldiers, of weapons, of leaders. Things that needed to stay very confidential. You remember the rules. Rule 1. Say nothing. Not to tambo keepers, not to curious farmers, not even to other chasquis unless protocol allows. You carry your mission in silence. If someone asks what you're transporting, you say it's a record of corn rations. It always comes back to corn. Rule 2. Don't delay. The longer a message is on the road, the more vulnerable it becomes. So you run, even when it hurts, even when the rain turns the trail into a soup of gravel and regret. Rule 3. Know the quipu, but don't explain it. Only trained quipucamayaks, the state's official record keepers, could decode the most complex chords. You, as a chasqui, could deliver it, maybe understand the basics, but you didn't teach anyone what it meant. That was by design. Even if someone intercepted it, without the right training, it might as well be a decorative braid. Historians still argue whether multiple versions of the same quipu were made and sent separately to ensure accuracy, or if everything rested on a single set of knots. Some say runners carried backup chords. Others believe redundancy came through oral memory, like a ghost copy of the message whispered from station to station. You reach a fork in the trail. One path heads toward a known tambo. The other, less traveled, less marked, cuts across a ridge you've never seen before. Your instructions were clear. Take the high route today. The official one has too many eyes. You tighten your sash, check your footing, and start up the lesser trail. The slope is brutal. Grass gives way to rock. The wind rises, carrying with it the scent of rain and old pine. You crouch under a leaning boulder for a moment of rest and remove the bundle from your satchel. It's tightly bound in red cloth, urgent. But inside, the quipu has more knots than usual. And something else. A small carved tablet. You turn it over. No writing, of course. Just a series of tiny symbols. A jaguar, a maize stalk, a sun disk. You've never seen one of these before. Your stomach flutters. You tuck it back in and keep moving. Ahead, a falcon screeches. It could mean anything, nothing. But in the world of chasqui, you learn to respect signs. You pass a solitary shrine to Viracocha, the creator god. A stone figure leans slightly, as if listening. You leave a coca leaf at its base, a quiet offering for safe passage and tight knots. In times of war or unrest, messages like yours might be orders to move troops, to seal roads, or even to shift populations. The Inca Empire had a top-down system of control, and the roads were its veins. Clog them, and things fell apart fast. You remember stories from the elders, how during rebellions, chasqui were sometimes the first targets. If an enemy could stop the message, they could delay the army. That's why some messengers trained in self-defense, not swordplay or spears, just evasive maneuvers. Tricks like ditching the bundle in a hidden cache if capture seemed certain, or swapping in a decoy bundle filled with knotted nonsense. It wasn't glamorous, but it could save your life. You break through a thicket and reach another sewa stone. You're on course. The next tambo is near, but you've been told not to linger. Just refill your gourd and keep running. The tambo appears as a gray shape through the mist. You don't enter. A young boy meets you on the trail. He says nothing, just hands you a maize cake and a clay cup. You sip, nod, exchange bundles. The new one is lighter, smaller, possibly a personal message, still important. This is what security looks like in the Inca Empire: silence, speed, and a network of trust older than any one runner. You take off again, the wind behind you. You're running like the world's on fire, and in a way, it might be. Not literally, thank the gods, but the sense of urgency in your chest isn't just from altitude this time. The message you carry is marked with black thread, a rarity. It signals emergency dispatch. a category saved for the most critical matters: landslides blocking major routes, disease outbreaks, rebellions, or royal ceremonies that demand an audience of half the empire, and 3 types of musical vegetables. You adjust the bundle at your side and push forward. This stretch of the Capac Ñan dips into a highland plateau where the clouds scrape the ground. Visibility fades fast, the wind picks up, and you brace against it, keeping your pace steady but quick. You whisper the message to yourself again, keeping the details tight in your memory. There's no quipu with this one: too fast, too fragile. It's oral, precise, and short. 3 roads blocked north of Hatun Juyok. 2 storage houses damaged. Request immediate manpower from nearby Ilu. Message for General Quespi. You repeat it again, out loud, quietly, like a prayer. Emergency messages had no room for error. The Inca government functioned on rapid responses. In a land with earthquakes, floods, and the occasional regional dust-up, timing was everything. And unlike the Romans, you didn't have horses or metal mailboxes. You had you. Historians still argue whether chasquis like you were trained in code language, compressed phrasing to deliver long meanings. Some believe phrases like, "house broken by stone teeth," meant a landslide had hit a warehouse. Others think the Inca preferred clarity, using short, direct language to avoid any confusion. Either way, one fact's clear: when the thread turns black, people run. You descend into a small ravine, hopping over trickling water and flattened moss. Your feet land soundlessly. You dodge a fallen log and sprint up the far side, heart hammering. Along the trail, you pass what remains of an old tambo, collapsed, half swallowed by ivy. It's not usable anymore, but it serves as a ghost of how dense and prepared the road system once was. At the empire's height, tambos stretched across more than 2.000 miles, keeping messages moving like a relay race with no finish line. And in moments like these, those tambos were lifelines. You're reminded of a tale passed around during training. A chasquis who delivered 3 emergency messages in 2 days, one about an avalanche, one about a noble who went missing during a hunt, and one about a llama stampede that flattened an entire village granary. The last one was apparently accompanied by a detailed drawing of a very angry llama. No quipu needed. That chasquis supposedly collapsed mid-stride on his final delivery. But he made it, and the emperor himself ordered a monument, well, a carved stone marker, in his honor. You think about that as your thighs start to cramp. You're not that chasquis, but you can still get this message through. The trail narrows again, and just ahead, a figure waves from a small outpost nestled into the slope. Not quite a tambo, more of a chasquis checkpoint, used only in high-urgency routes. The man there doesn't speak. He offers you a strip of salted llama meat and a refill of your water gourd. You nod, then relay your message word for word. He repeats it, perfect. But you're not done. Some emergency messages require multiple confirmations, the Inca version of CCing everyone in the chain. You'll now take a second route to the nearby administrative center. It's not far, but it's steep. Of course it is. The air thins again as you climb. You pass a pair of farmers, clearly confused by your speed and determination. One yells after you, "Are the Spaniards coming already?" You don't answer, for 2 reasons. 1. You're out of breath, and 2. The Spaniards won't arrive for decades. But you'd rather outrun a horse than deal with explaining that. You top the ridge and find a new trail, smoother, built with polished white stone. The Capac Ñan path. It means you're getting close to a regional capital. You increase your pace. The trail widens. You pass rows of carved stones shaped like steps, intended to ease the angle for llamas. You marvel, not for the first time, at how this road was made entirely without iron. Just stone tools, wooden levers, and a lot of determination, possibly fueled by maize beer. And then, just as the sun dips low and paints the mountains in gold, you see it, a circular plaza, a row of storehouses, a ceremonial platform. This is where your message ends. You slow, out of respect. And because, honestly, your legs are about to detach and walk off without you. A man in ceremonial robes greets you. His earrings are large enough to hold a whole avocado. His tone is gentle. Do you bring word from the south? You nod and deliver the message from memory. He doesn't write anything down. Just listens, then nods. Good, you may rest. The tambo has warm broth. You nod again, barely processing. Because here's the quiet truth. In the Inca Empire, the world didn't move on schedules. It moved on messages. And the fastest path from panic to action wasn't a horse. It was a sweaty, aching human. Like you. The broth at the tambo is hot. Steaming. It tastes like onions and bone. Thickened with chuño potatoes so light they could double as packing peanuts. You sit on a carved bench beside the hearth, grateful your knees still function. You've made the emergency delivery. But no rest for the dusty. Another bundle waits. This time bound in fine cloth with golden thread. Which can only mean one thing. It's bound for the Sapa Inca himself. Yes, that Sapa Inca. You stare at the bundle for a long moment. Your hands hover over it like it might burst into gold dust. Delivering directly to the emperor? That's rare, uncommon even among veteran chasquis. This isn't just a message. It's a backstage pass to the most exclusive palace in the Andes. You accept it with quiet ceremony. No words, just a nod, and a new escort joins you. A young priest who doesn't run, but walks briskly and talks nonstop. The Inca's inbox is busy, he says. You raise an eyebrow. Well, not an inbox, really, more like a listening session. Turns out, the Sapa Inca, child of the sun, ruler of millions, wearer of the world's fanciest cloak, didn't check his mail so much as receive it in person. Messages would arrive in Cusco and be delivered verbally by the chasqui to an intermediary. Usually a high-ranking official or priest. That person, in turn, would present it to the Inca, who might nod sagely, gesture vaguely, or decide that the potatoes in that one province aren't plump enough and dispatch 1,000 workers to re-terrace the fields. You crest a ridge and get your first glimpse of Cusco, the navel stone at the center of the world. It sprawls like a woven mat, its buildings laid out in the shape of a puma. The tail curls in the southeast. The head, where you're going, is the Sacred Heart. Golden roofs, temples, and the Corajancha, the Sun Temple, gleam in the late daylight. The priest beside you goes on. You'll report to the Suyuyuk, the regional overseer. He'll hear your recitation and take it from there. You nod, but your stomach tightens. This isn't a simple field report. This is the sort of message that could change policies, move armies, or, worst of all, result in more running. As you descend into the city, the road widens. Polished stones underfoot reflect the light like glass. Civilians part to let you pass. Some bow slightly, others just stare. Runners don't visit often unless something big is happening. You pass street vendors hawking maize cakes, alpaca wool shawls, and tiny quipu souvenirs for the tourists. Okay, that last one's just in your imagination. The air is thick with incense and roasted meat. At the palace gates, you pause. 2 guards step aside, eyes on your sandals. Muddy, cracked, clearly having traveled miles. That's your ID. You're led through a stone corridor to a smaller chamber lined with gold panels. A man in elaborate robes waits. You've come from the north? You nod and kneel. He gestures. Deliver it. And so you speak, clearly, calmly, every word, every name, every number, memorized and released like birds from your throat. He listens, doesn't interrupt. When you're done, he repeats a few key parts back, word for word. You pass the bundle. He doesn't open it. He places it gently into a carved box. You're dismissed. Just like that, you've delivered to the Inca. And you didn't faint. Later that evening, you're given a mat to sleep on in the palace's messenger quarters. Yes, that's a thing. And a hot meal that tastes vaguely of garlic and divine approval. You overhear a servant whispering, The Incas dreaming again. That's not poetic. He really did take dreams seriously. Messages from the gods. Visions. Sometimes your delivery might spark a spiritual vision, or a new temple, or a festival involving a lot of dancing and even more potatoes. You think about that as you stare at the ceiling. Somewhere in the palace, a man who claims the sun as his father is contemplating your words. You're not just a runner. You're part of how an empire dreams. You wake to the sound of a clay pot being set down a little too firmly near your head. A tambo worker, likely one of the palace staff, murmurs an apology and sets a small breakfast beside you, toasted maize, a slice of cheese, and, oddly, half a roasted guinea pig. It's a nod of respect. Palace runners get the good protein. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth. Your calves thank you for not immediately sprinting. But soon enough, you're summoned again. Another bundle, another path. This time, you're not carrying information. You're carrying stuff. Because the Inca postal system wasn't just for messages. It moved objects too. Eggs, fish, medicine, cloaks, occasionally, and we say this with respect, very confused baby animals. Today, it's a pair of sandals and 3 small clay jars. You double-check the tags, each marked with colored threads that indicate destination and urgency. One is bound for a healer in a mountain village. The others go to a tambo official with low morale. According to the note, you're basically delivering ancient HR perks. Historians sometimes call this the cargo courier class of chasquis. Less glamorous, perhaps, than racing emergency messages, but no less important. Life in the Andes was hard. If a village needed herbs, spices, a rare tool, or new sandals for the priest before a festival, it came via runner. You tuck the jars into a side pouch lined with llama wool and tie the sandals to your belt. Then you set out, this time downhill. You pass a few other runners going the opposite direction. One gives you a look that says, "You'd better not be carrying anything heavier than I was." You grin. It's the universal language of delivery professionals. The trail curves gently through a forested patch where the smell of eucalyptus sharpens your senses. You recall how delicate some past deliveries have been. One chasqui told you he once transported fertile bird eggs to a noble who had an aviary. They were wrapped in soft moss and slung in a basket across his chest. He ran the entire 12-mile stretch without tripping once. Said he didn't breathe the whole time. Another claimed he once delivered a live guinea pig as an apology gift from one village to another. It escaped. The recipient got a confused potato in its place and never noticed. Some of the most common objects chasqui carried were gifts for the Inca himself. Pottery, fine textiles, small sculptures, sometimes whole cooked meals, still warm, sprinted across miles for a ceremonial feast. You imagine the imperial kitchen. Where's the roasted corn? On its way, Your Majesty. ETA 37 minutes. Give or take a thunderstorm. You reach a tambo and stop for a water refill. The official here is young and unusually curious. What's in the jars? He asks. You smile politely and say, corn paste for a ritual. It's not a lie. One of them might be corn paste. The point is, you don't ask what's in the bundle. You just run it. In some regions, couriers also carried tools, spindles for weaving, chisels for stone carvers, or ceremonial knives. Nothing too heavy. You weren't a llama. You were fast, not furry. Still, the line blurred at times. Especially in remote zones where llamas couldn't go. Runners sometimes took on small trade loads, handing off goods between markets along their usual route. It wasn't official Inca policy, but let's just say no one was mad when a bag of coca leaves showed up early. You leave the tambo with a slightly lighter step, one jar down, handed to a healer with a smile so wide it felt like sunlight. She pressed a tiny woven bracelet into your hand before you left. A token. You tie it to your sash. The next leg takes you through a canyon. Steep walls. No wind. Just the sound of your sandals scraping against rock and the faint slosh of clay jars at your side. You pass a few llamas being led uphill by a pair of traders. They nod to you, and one calls out, "Want to trade jobs?" You shout back, "Only if I get your beard." He laughs. His beard is magnificent. At last, you reach the final tambo on your list. The man waiting is older, gray-haired, and sitting on a low stool with a blanket around his shoulders. You kneel, untie the remaining jar, and place it before him. He opens it, sniffs, and exhales slowly. Something herbal, maybe healing, maybe just nostalgic. "Thank you," he says. "From both of us." You glance around, confused, then realize he's gesturing toward a carved statue nearby, of a chasquis. Mid-stride, cloak billowing, you nod back, unsure what to say. You don't need to say anything. Because sometimes, even a simple pair of sandals carried across the Andes means more than 100 official quipus. You've had a good run today, literally. The weight of clay jars replaced by the lighter satisfaction of a job done well. But just as your calves start hinting it might be time for a nap and a friendly alpaca to lean on, your next assignment arrives, and it's a strange one. A tambo keeper, chewing coca and scratching his ear like the news personally offended him, says, "They want you to beat a llama. Not literally, just in speed. Test run, llama versus legs." You blink. What's the prize? He grins. Survival. And that's how you find yourself next to a handler holding a young, fuzzy, smug-looking llama with the personality of a bored noble and the haircut of a disgruntled poet. The handler explains that this is part of an efficiency experiment. The Sapa Inca wants more data. Not that he uses that word. But the idea's the same. Is it faster to send something by foot or fluff? Because while chasquis were the runners of the empire, llamas were the haulers, strong, stoic, and, let's be honest, grumpy. You couldn't ride them, but they could carry 30 to 50 pounds of cargo and plod for hours without complaint. Until they suddenly did complain. At which point they'd spit, sit, and stare at you like you owed them rent. Historians still argue whether the Inca relied more heavily on llama caravans or chasquis relays. The truth? They worked together. Llamas were the supply trucks. Chasquis were the high-speed couriers. One brought you your sack of dried potatoes. The other told you why you suddenly needed more potatoes. You line up on a mountain trail, wide, sloping, flanked by terraces. Your target, the next tambo, just under 3 miles away. Not far, but with enough elevation shifts to make your legs mutter curses in Quechua. The llama handler gives the countdown. You nod to your woolly rival. The llama chews stoically. 3, 2, 1. You run. The first part is flat, easy. You take the lead. The handler trots alongside the llama, guiding it with a rope. The animal plods steadily, unimpressed. You gain ground, but then the trail curves and climbs. And suddenly, your knees remember what gravity is. The llama keeps going, same pace, never speeding up, never slowing down. There's something deeply unnerving about being outrun by an animal that's not even trying. But you dig deep. Chasquis pride. You passed an egg once without cracking it. You dodged a lightning storm in sandals. You even remembered an entire census message during a nosebleed. You've got this. Halfway in, you catch up. The llama pauses to sniff a bush. You do not. You leap over a small stream. The handler laughs behind you. You don't care. You're in the zone now. And as you reach the tambo steps, chest heaving, legs jellified, you slap the doorway with your palm and turn to see the llama round the bend. 30 seconds behind. Victory. Barely. The tambo keeper claps. The handler shrugs. The llama makes a noise that could mean, "Congratulations," or, "I'll remember this." You collapse beside a jug of water and sip like a hero. The keeper hands you a roasted maize cake. Still warm. You chew between gasps. The point of all this? Not just bragging rights. The Inca system depended on balancing speed with capacity. Chasquis could deliver fast, but not much at once. Llamas could haul bulk, but they didn't rush. For time-sensitive matters, emergency news, sudden royal summons, a dream the Inca had about a hummingbird that needed investigating, chasquis were the answer. For everything else, bring in the llamas. Sometimes both worked together. A runner might arrive at a village with instructions, while a llama caravan trailed a day behind, bringing the supplies those instructions triggered. That synergy kept the empire humming. You glance at your competitor now being fed a handful of salt. Its tail flicks dismissively. You nod, extending a respectful look. Good race. It snorts. By now, the sun is leaning low, casting golden shadows across the trail. You're sore, starving, but also proud, because today, you outran a llama, which, in the Andes, is pretty much winning the Olympics. You're back on the trail, but something feels different. Not the road, it's still there, solid as ever beneath your feet, winding its usual way through mist and ridge. No, it's the forest, denser, wilder. You've entered the cloud forest, that curious halfway world between jungle and mountain, where things grow sideways and the fog breathes like it has secrets. Everything is wet, the trees drip, the air hangs heavy, your cloak sticks to your arms. Even your thoughts feel damp. You duck beneath a curling branch thick with moss and realize this leg of the journey isn't about speed, it's about survival. And focus, and snacks you should have packed. Running through the cloud forest isn't like other terrain. The trail here is narrow, often muddy, and bordered by plants that seem far too interested in what you're doing. Ferns as tall as you, vines with more confidence than they deserve, and birds making noises that sound suspiciously like laughter. Somewhere overhead, a toucan shrieks. You flinch. Chasquis often dreaded this stretch. It was infamous for getting lost. Even for seasoned runners, the fog could roll in within minutes and swallow the trail whole. The stone markers would vanish. The trees would shift in the breeze just enough to make you doubt your memory. You pause at a small crossroads. Left or right? You crouch and check the ground. Faint sandal prints curve left. You follow. Historians still argue whether Inca engineers deliberately left subtle trail signs for runners, chipped rocks, color marks, or even tree carvings. Others believe experienced chasquis simply memorized terrain by repetition. Either way, in this soup of a forest, any guidance is welcome. You come across a tambo, but it's overgrown, half swallowed by vines. You peek inside. Nothing but moss and what might have once been a guinea pig. You keep going. Minutes pass, maybe hours. Time is weird in the fog. Your footsteps sound too loud, like they're echoing through someone else's dream. The forest hums. The ground squishes. You adjust your sash and push forward. Then, crack, you stop. Something snapped behind you. You whirl around. Nothing. Just leaves twitching. A branch bouncing. You tell yourself it's a bird. A large bird that steals snacks. You keep moving. Faster now. There's a stretch here where the path crosses a stream. It's not wide, but it's slick. You hop across, landing on a stone with a squelch. Your sandals slip, and for a moment, you teeter, but you steady yourself, clutching a hanging vine like an accidental jungle acrobat. Your gourd sloshes. Your heart pounds. You laugh, breathless. Chasquis life. Cloud forests were known for their unpredictability. Rain fell sideways. Fog obscured not just trails, but direction. In some places, the trail itself was a hanging walkway, woven from vines and wooden slats. You cross one now, feeling it sway beneath your feet. Your hand grips the side rope. The entire world below is just green. Halfway across, a hummingbird buzzes past your ear. It hovers mid-air, considering you, then darts away. You exhale. Thanks for the judgment. Eventually, you reach higher ground. The fog thins. The forest peels back, and with it, your breath returns. You come across a sewa stone, half covered in moss. You clean it off with your sleeve. The spiral pattern on it glistens with dew. You're still on the right path. Nearby, you find a half-hidden quipu, tied to a branch, swaying gently. A marker, left for the next runner? Or a backup? You memorize the knot pattern just in case. Then jog on. Suddenly, the air changes. Drier, lighter. You've passed through the worst of it. You emerge from the forest, blinking in the sudden brightness. A tambo stands ahead, perched on a ridge. A runner waves from its entrance. You've made it. Your sandals squelch as you arrive. The runner offers a fresh gourd. You sip. It tastes like mint and relief. You glance back at the cloud forest. A realm of whispers, wet socks, and the occasional snack-thieving bird. You survived, which, in this profession, is the first step toward thriving. The next stretch of road feels haunted. Not by ghosts. At least not the spooky kind, but by absence. Silence, an eerie sense of what used to be. The trail is wide, well-maintained, and empty. Too empty. You slow down. Not from fatigue, though. Let's be honest. Your legs are a bit over this whole career in cardio thing. But because you know what this part of the journey represents. This is where the network started to collapse. It didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment when the Inca postal system switched off like a forgotten torch. Instead, it faded, piece by piece, like a dream you only half remember. First the edges, then the center. You pause at a crumbling tambo. The walls are still standing, but the roof has caved in. Inside, wildflowers grow where runners once slept. A few quipus strands hang from a hook. Frayed and forgotten, you sit on the old bench. It creaks, as if surprised to feel weight again. How did it fall apart? The usual way. Conquest. The Spanish arrived in the early 1500s, with horses, steel, and a frankly offensive lack of lung capacity for high-altitude walking. They didn't understand the Capac Ñan. At least not at first. No wheels? No paper? No money? What kind of empire runs on shoes and string? But they noticed how well it worked. Messages, food, soldiers, all flowing in rhythm, like breath. And so, as they spread across the Andes, they used the road system. For a while, they let chasquis continue their routes, now bearing Spanish orders, not Inca ones. Same sandals, new masters. But it didn't last. Soon, the tambos stopped being stocked. The relay stations were looted. The chasquis, now under foreign rule, lost their status. Many left. Others were conscripted or absorbed into colonial systems that didn't value running as much as paperwork and plunder. Historians still argue whether the Spanish destroyed the system deliberately or just let it rot from neglect. Either way, by the end of the century, the pulse of the empire had slowed to a whisper. You rise and keep moving, eyes tracing the stones beneath your feet. Still smooth, still precise, made by hands long gone, yet somehow more enduring than the empire that fell around them. Here and there, you pass signs of life trying to reclaim the network. Villagers using the road to carry firewood. Children playing beside a sewa. Alpacas grazing where warriors once marched. And sometimes, you see pieces of the transition. Sections where Spanish cobblestones clash awkwardly with Inca stairs. Where colonial mile markers have been wedged into sacred spaces. It's not subtle, it's not elegant, and it's a reminder that roads remember. You stop at a crossroads. One path leads to a still functioning town. The other, narrow, overgrown, vanishes into the hills. You take the second, not because it's shorter or faster, but because it still breathes like the old days. As you climb, you imagine what it must have felt like. The moment the runners realized they were no longer running for something, but away from something, away from an empire crumbling beneath their feet. The tambos empty, the quipus uncollected, the sacred trails now just stone. One tale you remember from training was about a chasqui who kept running even after the relay network was shut down. He showed up at a tambo, gave his message, and found no one there to receive it. So he ran to the next. Same thing, and the next, until finally, an old woman fed him, listened politely, and said, that message was meant for an emperor who's already dust. He supposedly nodded and said, "Then I've done my job." Maybe it's not true, but standing here, alone on a forgotten trail, it feels true. You reach a clearing where 3 trails meet. In the center is a single sewa. Someone, recently, has left a coca leaf offering beside it. The network's gone, but the road, still here. And sometimes, that's enough. You sit beneath a tree and let the wind tell its story. You're nearing the end now. Not just of this particular run, but of something larger. Something that began thousands of steps ago when you first set foot on the Capac Nyan. Heart pounding, sandals still clean, lungs naive and full of ambition. Now, your feet are sore, your tunic smells like every type of weather imaginable, and your legs are on autopilot. But your mind? Strangely calm, maybe even proud. You descend from the forgotten trail, rejoining a more well-traveled stretch of road. Ahead lies the final tambo of the route. It isn't grand, just a tidy building with walls patched by generations of local hands. A few woven mats out front, and a fire pit with warm embers still glowing. It smells like maize porridge and old stories. An old woman greets you, not a tambo official, just someone who lives nearby. She sees your sash, your bundle, your cracked sandals. She doesn't ask questions, just hands you a small gourd of chicha and gestures to the bench. You sit, you sip, you exhale. This place, this whole network, wasn't just a delivery system. It was a connection machine. It tied mountain to coast, jungle to desert, emperor to farmer. It took a world as wide and wild as the Andes and stitched it together with footsteps. And even though the empire has fallen, and the messages have stopped, the paths remain. In fact, you've seen them, everywhere. Today, hikers in neon jackets walk where messengers once sprinted. Archaeologists map the roads with drones, tracing lines long buried. Locals follow the same routes, carrying water, wood, or sometimes nothing but memory. The Capac Nyan still exists. Maybe not with the same urgency, or the same reverence, but every stone step remembers. Every tambo crumbling beneath vines recalls a runner who once stopped for water, or to tie a sandal, or to whisper a memorized phrase to the wind. And what about the chasquis? They're gone, but their legacy? It's you, imagining their breath, their rhythm, their grit, you, hearing the whisper of sandals against stone in your dreams. You, who now understand that an empire doesn't always vanish, it echoes. And if you ever return to these mountains, and maybe one day you will, try walking just a little farther. Just one more bend, just enough to see what the next chasqui might have seen. You gather your things, offer thanks, and rise. The trail continues, but now, it's not about speed, it's about remembrance. The trail grows quiet now. The sun has dipped behind the peaks, leaving the world in soft shadow. A hush settles over the mountains like a heavy woolen blanket. Warm and still, you walk slowly. No rush now, your footsteps light against the worn stones. The tambo behind you fades into the mist, and the road ahead curls like a whisper through the twilight. The air smells of cold earth and faded smoke. Somewhere, a bird sings once, then goes silent. Far below, a stream hums gently, like it's been singing to the rocks for centuries. Your body relaxes, muscles ease, your breath slows to match the rhythm of the path. With each step, the world softens, edges blur, colors mellow, thoughts drift. You think of all the messengers who walked before you, young and old, fearful and proud, each with a bundle, a message, a memory, all part of something vast. And you were part of it too. You picture the trail behind you, not just today's, but all of it. The deserts, the cloud forests, the golden city, the llama race, the emergency message carried by breath alone. Each moment a footprint, fading, but never lost. The wind brushes your face one last time. Gentle, almost like a hand. You close your eyes. The road continues, but tonight, you rest.